pass you over to the great man himself.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Am I on? No? Do I need to be on?
You've got the one on there, haven't you?
Yeah, okay. All right. The first is a set of rhetorical questions, if I can. Yeah. I'd like to just explain the system that got me to 412 species, and then just talk about the various ways that fish breed and some of the problems, and a few other bits and pieces, just so you won't ask me embarrassing questions. Some questions for you though. How much of a fish keeper or a fish breeder would you say you were? I'm mainly a fish breeder rather than a fish keeper. I've got a display tank, I keep fish in that, but the thing that really excites me about the hobby is breeding fish. So more different species, so much better. What are your aims in breeding fish? I really like this introduction that the club has started with breeding these new fish, new species. I think that's a terrific thing, and it's sort of, they're providing you the fish which are pretty hard to get otherwise, and that's a really good thing. When you're deciding about breeding fish, well, how many tanks have you got to breed with? We're all saying that, you know, fish rooms are a thing of the past because blocks are smaller, houses are smaller and all that. So you've got to be pretty sensible about that, because you need a couple of tanks really if you're breeding most types of fish. And then a simple question, what sort of fish do I really like? If you're not really keen on that particular type, well, why breed it? And the last bit, obviously, with the fish that we've got from the Amazon, they've got a different sort of water type to ones that you get from the lakes of Africa. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this, but there's obviously dry powder food that I mentioned down the bottom, and that's really good, but a lot of the fry like food that moves. And so if you're having vinegar eels or microworms or parameciums, the stuff up the top here, and we harvest it from a bottle like that. We can talk more about the way this happens if you're sort of interested. So the first foods will be paramecium, vinegar eels, and brine shrimp probably. Microworms up there, they're probably the easiest thing to culture. Yeah. The very first tropical fish I bred were red platies, and I only had a little sort of Tupperware container, and I didn't know how I was going to get or stop the parent fish from eating the fries. So I asked Mum about a bit of mesh, and she sort of cut up a bit of her bridal veil, and so I could put the adult fish in the female in the mesh, and the 11 little red platies swam out and survived. What I'm saying, I'd like just like to explain how it all sort of worked from. It's mainly from the extinct EDAS, Eastern Districts Aquarium Society. So they had a whole lot of rules that we had to obey. So it's not just me guessing the numbers. We had to sort of had a very strict system. One of the things that really impressed me was just how good people were at providing stock for me, and people were really enthusiastic about the process. Not just me, of course, but anyone else who was doing the fish breeding. It was just fantastic belonging to a club that sort of provides you with that much help. And so I'd like to sort of thank these people who've given me a great deal of help, particularly Briggsy. And down the bottom, this is Sabin. He did all the hard work, so he was the person who took all my reports and sort of checked the names and all that sort of thing. And he produced a record book which has all the information about who bred what over the time. I think it's probably pretty important to have that sort of record, because you can see that some of those fish have been in the country for a long time, and there may be people in authority who would challenge that, and new fish come in all the time, but sometimes they're not fish that should be here. So,
there's plenty of those.
There's plenty of those, yeah. So that's what it's all about. Liz's work was keeping a note of who bred what first and how many fish each person in the club bred. We had to keep forms. There was a special form, so the breeder's achievement, you could put 10 species on that form, but if you're breeding something for the first time, it had to be checked by someone just after the spawning and then 2 months later. So it was quite a system. So that's the first one. The claim has to be checked by somebody who is a member of another aquarium society or the Eastern District. So you couldn't just get your next door neighbour to certify. You had to have somebody who knew what they were looking at. And this is the first bred system. Now, I'm not saying this is the way you should do it. I'm just saying this is the way I had to work through it. And that's the start of my own list. That goes for pages. There's another aspect to this, though. There should be a reward for people who keep fish going, good stock. This is a thick gourami over here, the natural sort of form of that fish. You can't buy that anymore because they've got bronze ones or some sort of colour mutation. These sort of disappeared for a while, and then I think Bill's developed the breeding method. Is that right? And you've bred quite a lot of them, and they're back in the hobby, which is really good. So I wish there was some sort of recognition for people who sort of keep things going. I can still remember Ernie Hicks had the best bred platies I've ever seen. A bloke called Julian Bentley had the best guppies, black guppies I'd ever seen. So they're breeding new stuff, okay, but it's also important, I think, to keep good stock going. So I'll talk a little bit about how fish breed, and this is just in alphabetic order, nothing terribly important, but this is just my list, so it's not an official list in any sense. So we'll go through these reasonably quickly, and hopefully we'll sort of cover stuff you don't know. The most famous of the bubble nest spawners is the Siamese fighter, of course, all different colour mutations, but of the same species. One of the things I should mention is that the way EDAS did it was that you couldn't use subspecies. You had to have separate identities. By that I mean there are different types of swordtails, which is Hellerii. There's also Hellerii guntheri. Well, that's a subspecies. You couldn't count that as two. And with things like rainbow fish, there's Splendida. Well, there's Splendida inornata, Splendida tatii. You could only count that as one, not subspecies. Okay, so the fighters bubble nests. So the male gets air and coats of a bubble of air with his saliva, and then they spawn underneath. And the fry are kept up there by the male. He keeps catching them as they go down and spitting them back up. And sometimes when you float a coffee mug up the top, they'll spawn in that coffee mug or coffee cup and outside. And I think we've got some videos, so we'll give. There we go. Look at that. It worked, Bob. Where are you? Thanks very much, mate. Okay. Other bubble nest breeders, some of these, like the hoplos, some people have been trying for years to breed them, and other people just stick them in a tank and they go. So there's no real explanation, but you'll notice the male is has that very strong sort of pectoral thing, and the female doesn't have that. And people use the polystyrene, just float some polystyrene on the top of the tank, and they build the nest under the polystyrene. One presumes that in the wild they'd be under leaves of some sort, but the polystyrene seems to work pretty well. This is another bubble nest builder from Africa. I don't know if they're allowable import, Brixie, are they? No, sorry. Right, forget that. But you don't have to have tropical ones. These will breed outside the paradise fish, whole range of different colour forms now, of course. They'll spawn in rubbish bins outside, plastic bins outside, and you can see millions of little fry there. The second group, we've got cave spawners. You can see that the bristlenose down the bottom here is a very enthusiastic breeder. He's got one batch that's hatched there, and he's got another pile of eggs there. And of course we're looking at hundreds of dollars worth of fish there.
Many hundreds of dollars.
Yes. Sometimes they make mistakes. They don't know what classification they really are, because this one's a bubble is a cave spawner that's bred. That's the orange chromides, Asian cichlid, and it's just always a thrill to see that happening. And that, I'm afraid the eggs there are not all that clear, but it's terrific to see that happening.
The Nanakara anomaly, I always had them spawning either on a bit of wood, under a leaf, or between two leaves. I actually never had them spawning in a cave.
Ah, yeah. It's not just cichlids that spawn in caves. So we've got some Australian gobies and some New Guinea gobies. That's a peacock gudgeon, and that's them spawning there, and the desert goby over here. So some of the Australian New Guinea fish spawn in caves as well. And what about these guys? They spawn in riverbanks in South America. So all those little holes there are catfish spawning sites. We recognise a few of these, but they're a food fish as well. So the cuckoo catfish, I really have trouble explaining how this happens as part of evolution, because it's quite a strange process. We have the cuckoo catfish at the top, and we have these cichlids that are mouth brooders. We'll come to mouth brooders eventually, but when the mouth brooders are laying, the female lays her eggs, the male comes and fertilises them, and the cuckoos lay their eggs in that same sort of site in the same process, and they're in the female's mouth as well, the cichlid female's mouth, and they hatch quicker than the cichlid babies do. And so this remarkable picture here shows that 3 little cuckoo cats are attacking the cichlid eggs. It's just the cichlid eggs up the top. So yes, it's a very unusual process, of course. The 4th group are the egg scatterers, and some fish, particularly the kissing gourami, is the most famous one, I think. They just sort of spawn and their eggs float to the top of the tank, and they have hundreds of them, and they're a bit more difficult to get to survive. I've got some kissing gouramis, and I haven't bred kissing gouramis. I've said that I want to breed them before I die, so I haven't been tempting fate by having a crack at it. But then there's these egg scatterers, the ones that have sinking eggs or sticky eggs that they attach to plants, and the sort of groups that you've got there, barbs, rasboras, tetras, white clouds, and all those. So some absolutely magnificent fish. Some are a bit bigger like that, but some of them are really tiny, like these. Okay. And then there's a group where I've used just a bit of irrigation pipe and floated that up the top. So some of the better fish, that's where they like to spawn, in something up top. So I guess it's easier to have a bit of irrigation pipe floating in the top of your tank than trying to structure a whole set of leaves that gives the same effect. And with the live bearers, they're not really live until they come out of the female, so they actually come out as eggs. I'll show you with some platies in a minute. There we are. So they come out and then they sort of hatch and swim away, and if she's hungry she'll try and eat them. Swordtails and mollies, part of that live bearer group as well. It's pretty hard to get pairs of these. They're sort of hybridized now, and you only get males for sale, or nearly always just get the males available for sale. I've made a comment about yes, this one, which I should censor really, but it's an unusually long organ, that one, for the male. Another set of live bearers, you can get these in Australia, but they need big tanks and they need a lot of meat or fish, so you can't have frozen food. Glenn was saying on the way in today, but they're available in a lot of different colour forms, very attractive. They are bred here, but you need a big tank. You need to be careful handling them. They're pretty easy to sex because the male has claspers underneath, but I wouldn't recommend it. I've certainly not tried it, but they are live bearers. And the mop spawners, we talk about mops that are made out of acrylic material. There's no sort of magic about it. Every breeder who breeds these sorts of fish has probably got their own design of a mop. I tend to just have one that the acrylic isn't attached all the way round, because I sort of suspend it from the tank like that, and the fish can go in and out yeah, that works really well, I think. The mop spawners, there's a range of fish. So there's our blue eyes, all the rainbows, but the killifish as well. And other fish use them as well, like catfish sometimes spawn in them, quite often actually. Certain different types have preferences of spawning on glass or spawning on vegetation. If they spawn on vegetation, then they'll spawn on mops. My normal process is to take the eggs off the mop. With fish like rainbows, the bigger the fish, the smaller the egg. And so the little blue eyes have an egg about twice the size of a normal rainbow egg, and you consequently only get a fairly small number of eggs, whereas with the big rainbows you get hundreds in a day. So I just have these little trays with fry that you can see free swimming. I take them out with a pipette and stick them in a tank. I guess the clue here is that big fry sort of hassle little fry. So you've got, once they've hatched, you've got to sort of just put probably 2 weeks worth or 3 weeks worth in the one tank, and then get another tank, because otherwise the big ones will just dominate the small ones. Mouth brooders, quite a range from really big fish to relatively small fish from the African lakes. And some mouth brooders are in the gourami family and the betta family as well.
Some horse faces too.
Horse faces, yeah, lots of them. So we take out, usually would take out the eggs from the female, because she'd not eat for 30 days sometimes, and obviously she'd run down condition, and that's not a good thing. So this is a bubbler for mouth brooders. We have baby savers. I've brought one to have a look at here. This is basically an old ice cream container. It's got polystyrene around the edge so it floats. It's got just a little uplift so that the water comes in and then dissipates out through the plastic mesh, and the fish are fairly safe in there, provided no one jumps in with them. But the little ones, that's that. You can even use a kitchen sieve just to sort of suspend the fry in the eggs in the tank water. You don't have to have something that's really elaborate or a new tank. So all you just need is a bit of aeration and a bit of turbulence, and they'll survive. And then there's a whole range of plant spawners. Some fish are not really particular on where they spawn, like the angels there. These are angel eggs as well, and this one's looking after angel eggs there, but they'll spawn on just about anything. Some corridorus, these things we were just talking about before, harlequins I think are mostly imported from and caught wild, but you can breed them. I haven't been able to. They're one of the species that I haven't been able to breed. And catfish often lay eggs on the glass or on plants. You can just scrape them off and just pick them off the plants and take them to some sort of raising situation. But some aren't choosy, so there's angels there, and again, probably one of the easiest fish to spawn. They're my favourite, Rio Nano, and that fish that the club is encouraging us to breed comes from the same river. And this is just a picture of the numbers of spawn. These are what are called koi angels, just because we've got that sort of red on the dorsal profile. But you get hundreds of eggs. I actually counted the number of eggs the angels laid for a pair I sold at the last fish fair, and there was 500 eggs in the one spawning, which is a problem in itself, because you've got room to raise them. I'll talk about that in a minute. So, and these are Rio Nano angels, just hundreds of them. Look, sorry. And there's a story about Lake Russell. It's a big tank that I was talking about, someone else buying it when it was advertised here, and by the time I got to the freeway I'd worked out, well, I could buy it. And it was a 9-foot tank, and my late wife decided that we really could have it in the house, so it all turned out very well. But they're just some discus eggs. Other plants useful for spawning fish. I don't know that this is a legal plant. This is water lettuce, but
It's actually legal. It is legal in Victoria, but like frog bit.
oh
But
right.
in other states it's not. Some other states it's not.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, Susvasatang, water sprite, that's Myriophyllum, and just Java fern. So there's a range of things that you can spawn fish on. Oop. Oh, sorry, I'll get there in a minute. Splashing tetras, this is a real challenge because they jump out of the water and lay their eggs on underside of leaves, or yes, usually on underside of leaves. So I went to a lot of trouble to sort of put Anubias on driftwood and had it just sticking out of the tank, and they laid it on the cover glass. So never mind. So I mean, that's very unusual.
For the leaf and nest.
Yeah, some of the little fish look very attractive. A brocus doesn't normally look that in that proportion, where they have the big dorsal fin and the relatively small body. But they're very active little feeders, very attractive. And so we've got solid surface spawners, just on rocks or even the bottom of the tank, or on the glass. These are Corydorus eggs, I think, on this side. With the Rhamorhizes, they'll just lay on the glass on the bottom of the tank as this species. I can't identify that. Scott, can you?
That looks like a Freddy starling, mate.
Yeah, it won't be able.
Looks like a Freddy. It's more, a bit orange.
Right.
Nanogwens are more silver.
Okay. And the royal whiptails, in my display tank at home, I've got all sorts of unusual things. It's basically an Amazon tank, but the fish they pick out most is this royal whiptails. Wow, look at that! And so they lay on the glass, and the male sort of looks after the eggs. They start off opaque. You can see the development of the fry there, and then when they get really dark, the fry start sort of moving away, and in my tank they inevitably get eaten. But at this stage you can just siphon them off the glass, and then the real trouble starts. You've got to find out what the fry will eat. So they're one of the really difficult ones to raise. The shell dwellers, quite a wonderful range of little fish, basically little fish. Probably the most aggressive fish that I've ever had, these little guys, ocellatus. And one of the most, just pictures of the adults diving in and the fry around. But this guy has one of the most interesting techniques of increasing his harem. He just, the females are a lot smaller, and so in that shell there's a female, and he's massive, he obviously wouldn't fit in the shell, so he just picks up the shell and takes it over to his nest and increases his harem by that method. Substrate spawners, that basically they spawn in the bottom of the tank. Some of the most beautiful fish, these killifish, they don't live terribly long lives, but they may go to 2 years, but they're normally sort of a seasonal spawner and grow very quickly. And that is absolutely spectacular fish. But there's also Australian substrate spawners like this Tandanus, and the circular pattern you can see there are Tandanus nests in the sediment at the bottom of the stream. And the oddbods, I think the Madacca's very common fish, but the female keeps the eggs at a vent for quite some time, and then they're pasted on a bit of plant eventually and hatch and swim away there. But you can see them swimming around with bunches of eggs on their vent. And the other really odd boz, I reckon, is bitterling. These are freshwater mussels, so that there's an ovipositor there. The female lays the eggs in there. The male swims past the intake vent of the mussel and gets the sperm in that way, and this is inside the mussel. Their eggs hatching there. Some of the fish that we see commonly are, we used hormones to breed them, so it's very rare for even something which isn't really huge, like a red-tailed black shark, very rare to get them to breed, partly because they're nasty to each other, and there's usually just a dominant fish in the tank. But all these are bred with hormone-induced fish. The exception of this, apparently Greg Martin, who's going to talk here in October, he put in some clown loaches in a tank for the RSPCA, I think, or some similar group, and he found fry appearing in that tank. But that's very, very unusual. That's the only case I've heard of there. We're not moving. I'm sorry about that. Help. So that's a silver shark. So you see lots of them about perhaps 10 centimetres long, but they do get very big. Did we have a go? No. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay,
Sure, we'll go in there.
okay. Yes, people are saying, you know, what's the easiest fish to breed? Well, if you've got the right conditions, they're all easy, but generally speaking, people would say live bearers, but some of them are not that easy. And these we talked about before, mainly because they're hybridized. They require, I think, fairly saline water and fairly hard water. But these used to be very popular sort of 40 years ago. Does anyone here keep mollies, black mollies? One, well done.
When I was got a crap load in the shop.
Hey,
Sell heaps in the shop.
do you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. They were always such a striking fish, being, you know, just a solid black fish.
You used to be able to order big pairs, just like literally order pairs of the sailfins, and you could get 3 pairs of yellow, 3 pairs of black, 3 pairs of whatever. And this beautiful tank with fish that the thickest of their thumb and that long, and
Yeah,
you decide they were beautiful.
yeah,
You can't get them anymore. No wholesalers got them.
right.
Yeah.
Convict cichlids, they're pretty easy. White clouds, the main trick with white clouds is not to have catfish along the bottom, because their eggs just sink down to the bottom and they get eaten up. And this bloke you've met before with his the bristle nose, they're pretty easy. Some breeding this is more a problem of record keeping than breeding. Spot the difference. And what I'm just saying there is that there are groups of biologists that are splitters, which means they want to sort of divide species up into different categories, and some will change the names of the categories even. So that's a bit of a problem. If you think it's just a minor problem, these are all the situations. This is just one page from this book, where this is trying to record who was the first person to breed all these different sorts of things. But these are all the name changes. And it's, anybody like Neville's talking about doing this for this club. I mean, it's a disaster keeping up with name changes.
A lot of this is because we're keying them out now, though. We put them all under haplochroma, so we put them all under whatever. Well, now they're being keyed out.
Yeah.
And now the master of that, well, I was sitting there before. Here he is. He knows all about that. They're actually breaking them down correctly, so we're getting proper names for them now.
Yeah. The other thing that's true now that wasn't a while ago is that there really is a nice like name database for these. It's called the Catalog of Fishes. Yeah. You can type in the old name and it will tell you what the new name is.
Yeah, but I just felt sorry for Lister particularly, who was doing that. And then when Mr. Evers came here, Hans Evers came here to talk about Corydorus, and then there's now 7 types of Corydorus 7 groupings of Corydorus catfish. Well, I just haven't gone along with that. That was just too hard for me. They're all Corydorus in my record book. So another problem is distinguishing sexes of some species. With the kissing gouramis, some people say the females swell up. I've never seen a swollen female kissing gourami. These are chocolate gouramis. This is another one of the mouth brooders. Gouramis are interesting. They've got quite a lot of different types of spawners in there. The Empire gudgeons and Wilson's goby and these, they're all very difficult to get the first fry food right. I think Dave Wilson, after whom this one was named, even he has such a lot of trouble sort of getting the first fry food for them.
Is it the size of the food, do you think?
It's the size, and also I think these are slightly brackish, and so they have to get sort of almost marine food for the first time. This particular catfish comes from the twilight zone of the rainforests, very small streams, and don't sort of have it too bright. And he was feeding white worms and tubifex, the water's getting dirty, so he did a 90% water change and the fish spawned the next day. So yeah, I'll just let you read that.
Where was that done though? Because their water would be very different to ours.
Yes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think in Europe, I think it was Hans Evers, I'm quoting here, and that's very variable as well.
Well, German water's quite hard.
Yeah.
Rainwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have used rainwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was not really a surprise, but I got these are bottom spawners from Madagascar, and I sort of collected the eggs and I put them in a sieve in the tank, and I came out the next morning to admire these hatched fish, and there was nothing in the sieve, and I sort of did a panic, and the fish had hatched, and they were so tiny they went straight through the sieve, and whereas the eggs didn't. Some fish are particularly prone to disease, like discus and gill fluke. So there's your gill fluke. Sometimes we introduce hydra, and I don't know how that happens, but if you're feeding brine shrimp, hydra just appear. So this is hydra, and it's captured a daphnia there, and they will equally catch food. So it looks a bit like an anemone on the side of the tank, like a marine anemone, and you can get material to sort of kill them that doesn't kill the fish. And the plant, this is bladderwort, and there's a mosquito larvae caught in the plant. So you've got to be careful about what you introduce into your tank as well. Some fish are very aggressive, not just cichlids, but killifish as well.
I wouldn't love those.
Yeah, apparently is really horrible.
That's a pretty average photo of a beautiful fish.
Right. So sometimes it's hard to get the fish to spawn regularly. So I've got these sort of spawned very well 4 weeks ago, and someone else wanted some eggs this week, and where I was getting 40 eggs off the mop, I got 4 this week. And sometimes these guys, I don't know what turns them on, but sometimes they take a bit of time to spawn, and these are the ones you've just got to cheat with hormone inducing. One of the problems is if you're a good breeder, how do you get rid of what you've produced? And so ASB sponsors will probably buy them, the fish shops. You can sell them at auctions or the trading table. But this beautiful blue fish, I had trouble selling them at the shops, but then they sold it at fish auctions, so it's all right. This is a pretty poor picture, but all this little dusty looking stuff here is actually fry, hundreds of fry, and can you raise them and can you sell them? And they're big issues. So someone was saying the other day that they produce a lot of Jack Dempseys and the wholesalers wouldn't buy them. So what do you do with a whole lot of Jack Dempseys? So it's an issue that you can be too successful. But there is always another solution. And then there's just luck. Sometimes the rare fish that you wanting to breeds the night before you're going away. The only female of the species in your collection decides she wants to fly. The tank with the rarest fish springs a leak, has a heater that sticks on, becomes host to a jumping killie with a big mouth, and has the tiniest gap in the cover glass, just big enough. For me, the bucket list, I've done some licorice gouramis and some mascara barbs, so they've gone off, and torpedo barbs I haven't done yet, and the kissing gouramis, as I mentioned before. Just a bit of an idea of what you've got to do to get these things to breed.
These are really acidic, aren't they, too? How low do you have your pH?
Pardon?
How low do you have your pH on those? Because I've been told they've got to be really acidic.
Yeah.
Like 5 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of peat moss and a lot of oat leaves and that sort of stuff in as well. So what's the hardest fish to breed? Ever think about that for a moment? And and that's a goldfish, obviously. And the reason it's the hardest fish to breed is because it started off looking like that. And when you think about it, that's got a normal eye. It's actually got a dorsal fin. It's only got a single tail, and it sort of turned out like that. So,
Got a headache.
and you could easily have said those, because they're so different from what the original fish looks like, and I've tried to breed some bristle shabunkins, which is sort of just a single tail fish, but they don't have a pointy end like most goldfish. They have a rounded and a bigger tail, and they're supposed to have a range of colours. And I reckon I've got about 2 or 3 out of 200 or 300 that probably would, a judge would say, well, yeah, that's a real type. So many variants, but really the ultimate, it still amazes me that the male and the female in the discus are producing the slime that the fry are eating. I mean, where else does the male actually produce food for the fry? I know it happens in Wairau as well, but to a much lesser degree. And for those of you who don't know, I think it's probably fairly difficult to synthesize this process. Okay, so we got any questions? No questions? Good.
Oh, there's some questions in the room of this man.
Pardon?
I said, surely there's some questions in the room of this man.
I'll start. No mention of photo period and only of a slight touch on light levels. Any thoughts on that?
I think that there is a definite seasonality in the way fish breed, and I think, well, my new fish room has very little light in it, just a little window, and so I'm struggling to get fish to breed that are normally breeding pretty readily. I think they are sensitive to photoperiod, but I can't give you specific examples off the top of my head, but I think it's usual to expect that seasons do affect, and it's basically the daylight, because in a fish room the temperature is pretty well the same all the time. Yeah.
Barometric pressure would affect osmotic pressure as well, so that might be to do with the seasons.
Yeah.
Part of it.
Yep.
Because that would be independent in the fish room as well as outside.
We used to talk about Corridorus spawning more in stormy periods and stuff, didn't we?
Well, that's when we see, like what we used to have on the wall. We used to have our years ago the barometers and stuff, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah. And
That
so,
was when they were coming.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely so lunar cycles as well as photoperiod for marine fish, which is,
For marine fish,
which is
yeah.
mainly my big, and invertebrates, marine invertebrates. So a lot of the coral spawning now is done with photoperiod, lunar cycles, and temperature changes.
Yeah.
To follow the natural cycle. So they're spawning Australian corals in London, for example, at exactly the same time, using that kind of method, but don't often hear much around with the freshwater breeding about people experimenting with, the photoperiods and the or the light intensity or spectrum, because things like sea dragons, for example, if you use a UV light on a sea dragon, you'll get you'll see a glow on them, because many fish can actually see in the UV spectrum. So it's only when we excite those proteins and we get to change the wavelength that we can actually see them. But where fish can see a much broader spectrum than us, how much colour or how differently are they seeing each other under the artificial lights that we're providing them? So, for example, with your fish room that had good natural light before, they were probably getting enough UV to, for them to be able to see each other properly.
Yeah. Yep. And another thing which I didn't actually touch on was the pH of the water often affects the sex of the fish. So I think Glenn was talking about that with the crebensis. Is that right? Yeah. So if you get too much of one type, the best I think is to aim for fairly neutral in those sorts of situations. Yeah.
And it's funny because Adam and I were in conversation in relation to our macrostoma that we're both keeping.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and with the income.
I'm going to tie that in because somebody put a post on Facebook, look who's holding, or something like that with a macrostoma in Victoria. And then the very next day mine bred. So I sent a video to Brett, and he's like, mine's with bred too. So that's a notoriously difficult fish to spawn.
Yeah.
That have all spawned in quick successions in the same area in completely different water parameters.
Yeah, and with the incoming of the new moon, so it was literally everybody else was,
But it wasn't a visual thing because my fish are in a garage with complete blackout. There's no visual moon. It's something else. It's barometric pressure or.
Yeah.
That's one of the good things, though, isn't it? There are lots of mysteries to be solved. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it's important that we all share what we're keeping and share your experience. Let other people know that this is spawned or that's spawned, because sure enough it might just be what you need. That little tick of information that you've been missing to crack the code.
If you guys do the same presentation, as soon as Scott starts talking, I'd be like, because he's going to ask me what the pH is, and I don't test the pH. But I've bred the really acidic species too, like samurai grami, for example. I've bred somewhat successfully. I've done it twice, and I do not know what the pH is, but it is black water, like actual black, like Coca-Cola black, and I don't want to change the tank. So I know it is a very low pH that would kill almost all of the species, but the samurai gourami thrive. They don't just, it's the only way I can keep them alive.
Well, Chronocara filamentasia, like that too, you've got to keep them around about 5,
Yeah.
like you're going to breed them really low. Yeah, a few fish like that. John, did you find with your fish room that was brighter, did you find a lot of your fish spawned in the mornings?
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah.
That's why I've got a full skylight in my fish room. I find that it's fun in the morning. Yeah.
Yes.
When I moved from a room with natural light into the garage with a roller door,
Yeah.
I'd never bred a shelly ever again.
Oh wow,
Yeah. So,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Wow.
Under the natural light, it was so easy. I was like, why are these fish classed as like, well, I mean, they're not difficult, but you don't get massive numbers of spawns usually, but they would spawn all the time, multiple spawns in a row.
I guess if we could wind the light up slowly instead of having it come on once we do,
Yeah.
it might be different. We might be able to control it better.
There's a lot of the lighting technology out there now comes with
Oh,
inbuilt solar and lunar
Yeah,
cycles.
beautiful.
So yeah, it's a lot easier now.
Yeah.
And the UV's coming into the
What,
spectrum.
what you've been able to do now too. You've got
Yes.
reptile lights and all now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just an inflorescent tube that we have to deal with anymore, maybe a plant tube at that, you know, phosphorus tube that we get, we've actually got all the spectrum in
How
there.
much of the breeding the fish do you think is actually about spawning it versus how difficult the fry are to raise?
Sorry,
What proportion of the difficulty of breeding fish is the spawning versus the raising?
Raising the fry.
I've got heaps of species I've managed to, they're spawned and hatched fry, but never get them to.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Probably partly because, you know, I
Yeah.
don't have time to feed more than once a day and so on, but.
yeah, well, that's a disadvantage with fry. But I mean, the most difficult to see was the royal whiptail for me. That I mean, I think the best I got out of it, a batch of probably 60 or 70 eggs, you know, would have been 17, I think,
Yeah.
off the top of my head. But it sounds fairly easy to just put in bits of pumpkin or bits of zucchini or, you know, spirulina or things like that. But getting the balance right between overfeeding and keeping the water clean and providing the range of food that they want. And some people here, I think Robin was talking about actually feeding more protein or something to, yeah,
I fed my red lizards on salmon.
yeah,
Particularly early.
yeah,
Yeah. There's actually some of the catfish, even like the old 333s, they actually start off vegetarians, and once they hit that sort of 3.5 centimetre, they become carnivores.
yeah,
They actually change.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Please.
John,
John, you don't get yours. No, go for it.
generally, what do you use to condition a lot of your fish? It's like, I know a lot of a lot of powdered food or the prepared foods. They've come a long way recently, and they're a lot better than what they used to be. But generally, what do you use to condition?
Okay, to condition them, I use a mix of frozen brine shrimp, daphnia, and bloodworms. So, and I mean, if mosquito larvae become available or live daphnia, I'd use them. But yeah, the frozen food's probably what I use. But as we learnt, I think in February, you don't do that all the time. You just, you know, give them a period of when they got to sort of struggle for food, and then you feed them a lot, like happens in nature. It's boom and bust, isn't it? And so, yeah, so when it's the boom period, it's often frozen food. Yep.
Can you put your hands together for Mr. Carter?